We all know that charging cables and wires aren't the most exciting things in the world, but a few weeks ago I stumbled across something a little different that I wanted to feature in this video. It's a illuminated charge and sync cable. Well, if you're thinking that sounds familiar, I've probably seen something like that before, you're not wrong. There's something that's been on the market for many years now that's called a EL wire, or electroluminescence, and it is a pretty interesting effect, especially in the dark, and it kind of lights up and you're able to see it, but in broad daylight it's very difficult to actually see. Another version of this charging cable or wire uses LEDs, which faces the same problem. It's difficult to see. Now this version uses, or supposedly claims to use, lasers. So that's a very interesting concept. There are lasers embedded onto the USB socket, and then there's a fiber that runs across, allowing you to more clearly see the light even in broad daylight. That is at least a claim. We have three versions in front of us that we're going to test out today, and the first one here is a modern USB Type-C plug, and this is a 4 feet version of the cable that's supposedly red in color. The next version here is one that has a lightning adapter for iPhones and iPads, and also has a micro USB adapter with it, and this version is 3 feet and green in the color, so different lighting colors for the laser diodes. And the third one here is blue, so it's a blue laser, also 4 feet, and you can also tell the wavelengths of the lasers from 510 nanometers to 450 nanometers to 635 nanometers. So the different colors correspond to different wavelengths, which is kind of interesting. Now, the only downside to these is that the cost right now is still pretty high, because this is a very interesting new concept. One of these cables retails for $20 a pop, which is perhaps not as much as people are willing to spend for a illuminated cable, but we should see if the cost will come down over time. So this is what the cables look like. They're individually wrapped. The first one here comes with the adapter from Lightning to micro USB, so pretty similar to other 2-in-1 cables that we've checked out in the past. And there's also a Velcro that says Cubilux, which is the manufacturer and developer of these laser illuminated cables, and it's also color coded, so you can tell this one is green in color. This one is red, but the aluminum that they're using for the plugs is closer to pink in color. And then finally the blue one, which is also a Type-C plug. You can tell that the arms for the USB part is a little bit longer than your typical USB plug on a smartphone cable, for instance, and that's because it also has part of the laser that's coming out, and then the fiber here, which is basically completely transparent, as you can see, is just passing the light along and refracting it, so it makes it visible even all the way across on the other side, which is plugging into your phone. So a very interesting concept. The wire itself is still made out of a rubber material, but it prevents tangling because it's a flat material instead of being round. So I have a power bank with me, a pretty heavy-duty one. Let's try out charging just one device first to see how well the glow effect is. I'm going to try the blue one, and let's try plugging it in. You'll notice that it immediately pops onto life, and indeed it's pretty visible. We have studio lights turned on, which are very bright. All of these lights are facing down on this product right now, and you can tell on camera how it's still showing up a lot more easily. I can tell you now that the EL wire and the LED illuminated wires that we also did a review on about 2 years ago was definitely not as bright. We needed to dim the lights down completely to see it. So this has one benefit, one being if you don't really know where you placed your charger or your cable, it's a lot easier to just look around and see where it is. And let's try plugging this into the charging port of this tablet. It will blink once. You can see that charging will commence automatically, and when it is being in the charging mode, the visualization, instead of being LEDs or lights that are slowly going from one direction to the tablet, instead it's just fading in and out. So that's one difference with the EL and LED wires, is we don't see the direction of movement between the power, but we do see this fading effect that tells you that it's currently in this charging state, and overall it's a pretty interesting effect, as you can see here. So obviously if we now try and dim all of these lights here, you can see that the laser lights are even more apparent, and indeed it's actually a pretty vibrant color that is very easy to see. And once charging reaches 100%, it will stop the strobing pattern and just turn a solid color. So when it comes to the charging rate and performance, they also are pretty good. These are quick charge enabled USB cables, so you can potentially have power output of 5 volt to 2.4 amps, allowing you to very quickly juice up compatible phones and tablets. So for instance, an average smartphone will charge up in under an hour and a half in most instances, and a larger tablet will charge up in under 2 hours using this cable. It's also a sync cable, as the name implies, so you can plug it into a computer, whether it's Mac or PC, and be able to transfer content. And indeed, we have a red laser. So it's very similar to if you've seen a laser pointer. It's the same overall kind of color and shade, and it is very vibrant as well. Let's plug it into a phone. And same thing goes here. It's going to start charging automatically and start to fade and strobe in the same way that the blue one is doing that trick. Comparing these two next to each other, I would say that they're about the same in terms of visibility, which is nice to note. In fact, on camera, it seems like the blue is coming across a little easier. I originally thought that it would be the brightest at the stem and then get slightly weaker in terms of brightness as it reaches to the device because it's a long cable, but really it's very consistent. The brightness from the end here, including the tip, are pretty much the same, so the fiber really is doing a good job of passing along the color very evenly, as you can see here. In terms of the overall brightness in real life, I would say that again, these three are pretty much the same. In fact, the blue seems to be maybe even the brightest, but the red and green are the more traditional kind of laser-like colors that we typically associate. Now, the only slight downside that I can think of is this will probably take more electricity to charge up a device because at the same time it needs to power the laser. So if you're using a power bank and you're using this on the go, it's probably not going to be the most efficient solution. I also wanted to just very quickly point out that if you just put your devices onto a carpet or a white surface in general, that it makes the effect even more apparent, whether it's daytime or nighttime. One other observation, though, is because it is powering the laser diodes at the tips and plugging into power at the same time, the tips can get actually quite warm, in fact, slightly hot. So that's just something to keep in mind. But there is a safety mechanism. If it reaches a certain temperature, it will still continue charging up your phone, but momentarily it might shut off the laser light. So you can check out more details about the Cubilux laser illuminated charge and sync cables if you're interested in the links down below. But for now, this has been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews.